to the entertaining Talkin' Sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. Hope everybody had a happy Thanksgiving. Late video up for you guys because, well, I was celebrating Thanksgiving with my family, and as you guys know, if you watched my previous video, I will be very busy tomorrow. So I wanted to get a video up recapping what happened today on Thanksgiving between the Dallas Cowboys and the Washington football team and what it could potentially mean for the New York Giants playoff chances. And if you would have told me with 6 weeks to play that the Giants have a realistic possibility of being in first place with just 5 games remaining, I would have called you an absolute lunatic, especially if you would have told me they'd be 4-7 if they were able to do it. If the Giants are to win this week and Philadelphia loses on Monday night, the New York Giants will be tied atop the division with the Washington football team, and the Giants will own the tiebreaker. Reason being, of course, they swept Washington this season. Now, that doesn't mean anything right now. It's still 5 games to play, but this is absolutely a must-win game, even though the Giants have gotten help as of late with the Browns beating the Eagles, and I think this does help us with Washington beating Dallas for the simple reason, like I said, we own the tiebreaker against Washington. They also play a much tougher schedule than that of Dallas. I still think the Giants play a tougher schedule than Washington, but if the Giants and Washington both tie, the Giants get in. And after today's events, I would say it's much more likely that it's much more possible, I should say, that the Giants can make the playoffs with 6 wins. For Washington to get in, I think it's definitely going to take 7 because they don't own the tiebreaker against us if, of course, we're able to get the 6 wins. And I think they're probably going to have to beat the Eagles the last week. But I'm going to jump into some of the scenarios that could play out going into Week 17 because, of course, we play Dallas and they play the Philadelphia Eagles. And right now, it's still a 4-team race, even though Dallas certainly hurt themselves dramatically with this result. They play at Baltimore next week with Lamar Jackson potentially out for that game from what some of my subscribers said. So we'll have to wait and see how all of that plays out. But as far as what happened today, yes, it's certainly good news for the Giants, but it's far from the greatest news ever. We still have to beat Cincinnati, and even if we do that, if you look at the remaining schedule for both Washington and Philadelphia, let's take Dallas out of the equation right now because for us to have all I want to do is to be able to get into Week 17 and control our own destiny. And right now, for us not to be able to control our own destiny as far as Dallas goes, if we beat Cincinnati, it's nearly impossible. Because right now, Dallas is 3-8, which is 5 games remaining. And if they are to lose to Baltimore next week, which I think most of us expect, even if Lamar Jackson doesn't play, the way Dallas looked today, they lost 41-16. Baltimore still has a very good offensive mind. They still have a great head coach. They still have a great defense. So I think most of us expect Baltimore at home to probably beat Dallas. And if they were to do that, Dallas would be 3-9. Meaning, if the New York Giants even had 5 wins and Dallas were to win their next 3, we'd still control our own destiny going into Week 17. So, with all that being said, I'm not too worried about Dallas right now. I still think we're going to have to beat them last game of the season, but I want to have that opportunity in Week 17 to win that game and get in. So, for us to be able to get in right now with 6 wins, including a win Week 17, that would mean that we would need one of the Eagles or Washington to not be at 6 wins going into the last week. And for the Eagles, it would be 5 since they have a tie. If the Eagles are 5-9-1, going into that last week, and the Washington football team is 6-9, well, that would mean that the Giants, no matter what, will need 7 wins to make the playoffs. If one of those teams has 1 less win, well, then, of course, we'll be rooting for the team that has the 1 less win to beat the other team, and then the Giants would be able to get in with 6, and we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. As far as Washington's remaining schedule goes, Washington plays at Pittsburgh next week, then they play at San Francisco, Seattle home, and then they have a couple winnable games after that. They have Carolina home, and then, of course, they finish with at Philadelphia. And if you're a Giants fan, the way I look at it is this. They probably should lose at Pittsburgh, a team that has not lost all year, and I'm figuring they're probably going to lose to Seattle. I'm not saying either's a shoo-in, but I think that those 2 teams should be favored. The other 3 games are winnable games for Washington, and if you're a Giant fan, as long as they only win 1, you're sitting pretty in the divisional race because that would only give them 5 wins. And even if they were to win 2, they'd still only have 6. And if we get the 6, we would get in. As far as the Philadelphia Eagles go, if they lose this week to Seattle, which most of us expect, they still got a bunch of challenging games coming up in no specific order. They play the Packers, they play the Saints, and they play the Cardinals in Arizona. At best, they're winning one of those games. So if they lose this week, in my opinion, at best, they'll have 4 wins with 2 games remaining. One being Dallas and then one being Washington, the last game of the season. If they were to lose to Dallas, well, then they'd only have 4 wins going into that game. If they were to win, they'd have 5. And if, as a Giants fan, we have to hope that one of those teams has less than, that either Washington only has 5 or Philadelphia only has 4 going into that last game for us to have a possibility to make the playoffs with just 6 wins. But we're going to have to wait and see how it all plays out, and it's 1 week at a time. I'm just forecasting the complete scenario. But we got to beat who's on our schedule. And the first team up is the Cincinnati Bengals, and it's a game we absolutely should win. And if we do, if you ask me, yes, it's looking very likely that the New York Giants will be sitting in first place in the NFC East with 5 weeks to play. And as a Giants fan, that's all I could ask for. Of course, I want to make the playoffs this year. And of course, if we win, I'm going to think we could. I mean, I'm a Giants fan. We're going to be in first place with 5 weeks to go. But the most important thing for this team is growth. You don't want any let up after those last 2 games. You want to take care of business against Cincinnati, and then you want to go toe-to-toe with some of these good teams. I know we're not going to beat all these teams. We're playing Baltimore. We're playing Seattle. We're playing Arizona. We're playing Cleveland. Some of them more winnable than others. They're going to have to find a way to win at least one of those. If they can win 2, they'll be sitting even better. But no matter what, I think the New York Giants will more than likely have to win Week 17 to make the playoffs. But as a Giants fan, I just want to have that opportunity. Winning in the last week of the season against the Dallas Cowboys, and I'll roll the dice. The way that team looked today, their defense is horrific. They gave up 41 points to the Washington football team. And the Giants right now, they're starting to click, even though it may be against some poor opponents. And we know we're going to be playing a bear of a schedule after Cincinnati. So we'll see how we stack up against some of these teams. But I don't think Cleveland's unbeatable. I don't even think Arizona's unbeatable. Arizona is a missed Hail Mary away from being 5-5. Why can't we stick with these teams the way that the New York Giants have played? And if we can get one signature win this year in those 4 games, yes, more than likely, after today's events, the New York Giants will be playing for the playoffs Week 17 against the Dallas Cowboys. But it's 1 week at a time. And we can't even start to dream and think about the playoffs until the New York Giants knock off Cincinnati. Yes, have we gotten some help? Absolutely. The Cleveland Browns helped us out tremendously this past week against Philadelphia, and we need Seattle to do the same thing. And today, in my opinion at least, Washington helped us out with Dallas. But none of it matters unless the New York Giants are able to take care of business against the Cincinnati Bengals and then pull off one upset in our next 4 games. Something that I think the New York Giants will be able to do, and then that would take us to Week 17 against the Dallas Cowboys with a potential scenario of a win and in. But it's 1 game at a time. We got to take down the Cincinnati Bengals. I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving, and good news for the New York Giants. And I'm very thankful for Jerry Jones. As always, guys, if you like what you watch, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.